Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp. Today I'm at the Higher Ground Conference Center where we're having the Creation 2003 conference. This is Dr. David Menton that I have with us. He's with the Institute for Creation Research. That's right.
No, I'm with Answers in Genesis.
Well, I goofed up on that, but that's okay. Anyway, we're going to have obviously a skull session here with Dr. Menton. He is, you're a medical doctor, is that what you do?
I have a PhD in biology from Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And I served 34 years in the faculty of Washington University School of Medicine, which is in St. Louis.
Okay, so your interest in this and the area of human origins stems from what kind of research did you do in this, or?
Well, my research dealt for many years with the skin, the barrier quality of the skin and the epidermis. I also did research relating to osteoclasts, which are cells that remove bone in our body. I've done research on the placenta and a number of other areas. My teaching was primarily in a course called histology, which is a course that medical students take during their first year of medical school. We examine all of the parts of the body through the light microscope and down to the electron microscope level. And I also taught gross anatomy for about 8 years. And there we dissected the human body. That's how medical students learn.
Cadavers. My daughter is about to go into something like that also. I think we're going to dissect the issue a little bit about early man and some of the fossils that have been dug up over the years that have been used by evolutionists to demonstrate or prove, according to their own minds, that man evolved from the apes. And we have some examples of these evidences that they've come up with here behind us. Where there's one here that we're looking at right here. This is Lucy, right?
That's right. The common name for that would be Lucy. It has a kind of a long scientific name that is a bit of a tongue twister for a lot of people. It's called Australopithecus afarensis, and Australopithecus really means southern ape. And so it is considered an ape, but this particular ape is believed by perhaps certainly most evolutionists who specialize in human evolution. This ape is believed to be an ancestor of man, and of course I believe God created man in essentially his present form, and that there were no ape men. And so part of what I've been doing here is to discuss the evidence for the ape or ape-like evolution of man.
Now, you would distinctly classify this as an ape, would you?
Yes, there are many things about this skull. First of all, if you look at it, that's a kind of a small skull, meaning a small brain, even by ape standards. Mm-hmm. So I don't think any evolutionist would be inclined to confuse this with a human skull, nor do they call it human. We call our genus and species Homo sapiens. Homo means ourselves, and sapiens means wise, so you know who named us. We called ourselves wise. This is Australopithecus, which pithecus means ape, but there are certain features of this particular creature, which I'll just call Lucy, so I don't have to use the word Australopithecus afarensis over and over.
I think your audience will too.
That's right. We'll just call her Lucy. Evolutionists do the same thing. The first thing is there's more than one specimen of this creature. At least it's believed there's more than one specimen. The specimen that is most complete was the one that was given the name Lucy, and that specimen was about 40% of all the bones of the body. And that's unusual to find any primate that has 40% of the bones together in one pile. Normally you get bits and pieces here, like the teeth are the hardest part of the body, and you do tend to find teeth in the fossil record. But we can't really learn as much from teeth as we'd like to.
You don't learn the whole tooth and nothing but it.
No, there have been cases where entire creatures have been imagined on the basis of one tooth. We have the famous example of australopithecus, where a tooth was interpreted not only as an adult human being, but there was a picture published in an English newspaper that showed the tooths, the tooth's wife, the tooth's farm, the tooth's kids, everybody, all based on a tooth which turned out later to not be a primate tooth at all, but a tooth from an extinct pig.
Well, we all make mistakes.
But Lucy is believed by evolutionists to be an ancestor for some of the following reasons, or includes the following reasons. First of all, the teeth are relatively small on Lucy compared to apes. I guess I forgot to tell them to bring one of my ape skulls up here. But ape skulls tend to have long teeth, and particularly long canines. And this particular skull has relatively small teeth. Also, Lucy has relatively thick enamel. The outer layer of the tooth is called enamel. Humans have thick enamel, but apes tend to have thin enamel, and Lucy has relatively thick enamel. Otherwise, there's nothing really about the skull that would lead you to suggest that she's anything but an extinct ape. What about these teeth? Relatively small, thick enamel. The problem is there are living apes that also have relatively small teeth. Theropithecus scalata is a high-altitude Ethiopian baboon, has a relatively short face like humans do, has the small teeth, but again, clearly an ape. In fact, I saw one in the zoo in San Diego, so no question, these are not humans. There are other apes that have relatively thick enamel. The orangutan, for example, has relatively thick enamel. So I don't think we can take these characteristics as being any kind of proof that this creature was turning into humans, which I don't believe. And then, of course, there's evidence that is cited in the rest of the body, one of which is the knee. And I see I forgot to bring both components here. This is a femur. And if we put this femur on the table, that's the upper leg, this would be the right leg here. If we put this femur on the table, you'll notice that it's not perpendicular to the table. It tilts this way a bit. Okay. And we call that a carrying angle. And humans have about a 9-degree carrying angle. That is going down the femur, which we're kind of knock-kneed. Let me demonstrate, like this. And then when you get to the tibia, that bone goes straight. And so there's an angle here. And what that does is keep our feet together. Otherwise, our feet would be placed further apart. And that would make it difficult to walk. We'd have to bring our weight from side to side to keep from falling down like apes do. So when they found that carrying angle on Lucy, they thought, well, there you go. This is an ancestor of man because she has a carrying angle. Most apes have straight legs. Well, once again, we need to ask the question, are there any living apes that nobody suggests are becoming human that have a carrying angle? And the answer is yes. We have orangutans and spider monkeys and others. So that's kind of part of the evidence for why some people think Lucy might be an ancestor, and I disagree.
Now, one of the things that has happened with me concerning Lucy is that I had a little bit of debate on the internet, and it's still going on, concerning where Dr. Johansson found Lucy's knee joint. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Dr. Michael Gerard's videotape that talked about, that the knee joint was found 1.5 miles away and a couple hundred feet lower in the elevation than the rest of the Lucy skeleton. And the point that the evolutionists made was that these are two separate individuals, that they were that was never claimed that these were the same individual. Well, unfortunately, what happened during that particular lecture that took place, that wasn't really made very clear. It was, they were not only putting them together physically, but logically in the lecture, and so I think that the confusion, if there really was confusion, is it was their own fault. But
Yeah, I think the important point perhaps isn't whether, after all, what is a knee joint? A knee joint has to include this end of the femur and the proximal end of the tibia, and then a kneecap. Well, they didn't find the kneecap.
yeah,
So what they actually have in Lucy is they have one limb, I believe it's the right femur, and then for tibia they have the proximal end of the left tibia.
yeah.
And the two together would make a knee joint, except they're on opposite legs. Well, you can make a mirror image here of this specimen, put it over here to see how the two fit together. I think the central point is that Lucy and animals like this appear to have this angle between the femur and the tibia. And that angle is deemed to be important by evolutionists. They say that because Lucy has this, she could walk on two legs as we do, with a similar stride and a similar step, because humans do have this angle.
But do current apes with this type of angle that you were just mentioning walk on two legs?
Well, that's the whole point. Most apes, of course, are capable of walking on two legs. In fact, I happen to have a dog that's capable of walking on two legs for a short distance. And of course, chickens walk on two legs all the time. And that in itself doesn't mean much. What we're talking about is not merely walking on two legs, but doing so comfortably and with a pace or a stride that is typical of humans. No animal walks with the type of stride that a human uses. Some years ago I saw on a TV program, I suspect rather like this, somebody had a movie clip of Bigfoot. And I was kind of suspicious when I saw this movie clip, because it looked to me like it was a human being in an ape suit.
There you go, yeah.
And the fellow that was in the ape suit was kind of looking back to see when the camera was ready. And he must have got the go-ahead, and he started walking. And he walked with that deliberate walk you would see with somebody going down the street in Brooklyn or someplace like that. And clearly, no monkey walks like that. And I really don't think that if there were a creature like Bigfoot, he would have either, and I don't believe in Bigfoot. But the human gait is distinctive, and no ape walks like that. And yet, the argument is that Lucy, this creature here that we were looking at, that it was an animal just like her that made those footprints that Mary Leakey found in Tanzania, in Lotoli. And those footprints are very interesting. There's about 40, 50 feet of trail with one step after another of what appear to be three individuals, an adult, a younger child walking next to that adult, and then what's really intriguing is a little child that was walking and putting her footprints in each of the big footprints.
No, that's kind of neat. But I think that most creationists would consider those human footprints, would you say?
Absolutely, absolutely. They are supposed to be 3 million years old, according to Mary Leakey, but in fact, they look exactly like modern human footprints. So anyway, they say they're 3 million years old. They say that this creature is 3 million years old. Therefore, Johansen, who discovered this creature, said, this must be the one who made the footprints. Well, they have found enough of these creatures now that they have found foot bones and toe bones, and the evidence shows that the feet were not shaped like human feet. They had long curved toes, just as you'd see in an ape. In fact, we now know that Lucy was a knuckle walker. She had locking bones in her wrists so she could walk with her knuckles on the ground. This is quite unlike the exhibits you see in the zoos. Our St. Louis Zoo in St. Louis there has a model of Lucy, and from the neck on down she looks just like a human. Hairy, but a human body. And the rest of the way she looks like an ape.
And they show the human feet, right?
Absolutely, they show the human feet. And the fact is, we know that Lucy, or this type of creature, didn't have a human-type foot. It had the
right.
long curved toes. So that's more evidence that this is just an extinct ape.
So what we have a lot of is artistic anthropology.
Right.
Now, Neanderthal Man is that what this character is?
Yeah, that would be Neandertal Man. Let's you hold Neandertal
Oh,
Man.
alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well.
You hold that one, and I'll hold the human skull. You know, it's interesting. What evolutionists have done when they go in the fossil record, they have found ape skulls that they have tried to upscale and emphasize how they are human-like, and that was certainly done in the case of Lucy. Unquestionably an ape, but try to emphasize this or that feature to suggest she may be human-like.
Okay.
And then they have found human specimens in the fossil record, and they've tried to take some of those, such as Neanderthal Man, and downscale. In other words, play down his human qualities and try to make him into something that is more like an ape man. But Neanderthal Man is human in every way. In fact, if you look on the side of the jaw there, on your side, is there some print on there?
Yes.
And the manufacturer of this skull, it is a replica. These are not from a living individual. These are plastic replicas.
Obviously not living.
But it gives you the, I mean, not from a living, not a real skull. It's a plastic replica. This name here should sound familiar to you. It means-
Homo sapiens neanderthalensis.
Right. So in other words, Neanderthal Man is classified as Homo sapiens, which is the same genus and species we're in. So here's a human skull here. This is Homo sapiens, and that's Homo sapiens. And so that's not an ape-like ancestor. It has the same classification as we do. But they put a subspecies name on it, and that's where the Neanderthalensis comes in. And there are some unique features of the Neanderthal body. We have found skeletons on essentially every continent, so there are a lot of complete Neanderthal skeletons. And there are features about their skeleton which makes us classify them as a variety called Neanderthal. But there's nothing about the Neanderthal body that we know of that makes it anything other than a human being. We've even found that little bone in the neck called the hyoid bone that some of the muscles of speech attach to. It looks exactly like our hyoid bones. Now, what's different from, let's say, most humans today? Brow ridges here, as you can see, are a little larger. This is called torus. And there are groups of people who are quite human and quite intelligent and just like all the rest of us who do have brow ridges. The Australian Aboriginal, for example, has somewhat of a torus here. In fact, Charles Darwin had rather large look at the picture. The next time you see Charlie,
Oh, yeah.
he had quite good brow ridges there. But everything, the skull, for example, is quite long. Neanderthal Man had what we call a bun. Now, I'll hold this skull up, and you hold that one up. This curvature here is not as deep. You see how that goes way in there?
Yes.
We call that the bun. And Neanderthal Man had that kind of a bun on the back of the skull, and most modern men do not. There are some other features. If you look at the size of the skull, Neanderthal Man actually had a bigger brain, on average, than humans do today.
Close to, yeah.
In fact, it averages about 200 cc's larger. Now, if it were smaller, you can be sure evolutionists would make a big thing out of that. But it's larger. Now, a large brain doesn't necessarily mean you're smarter. Women have a smaller brain than men, and everybody knows that men aren't smarter than women, right? So,
Well, at least that's what my wife says. But I had a interesting debate about Neanderthal Man on my website concerning a reference that I had about Neanderthal specimen buried with chainmail armor, and they also found in the tomb horse skeleton and some spear points. And I was challenged on this because of course this shows clearly that this Neanderthal skeleton was modern human. And so my problem was that the reference I had was poor. And just recently, we were able to find the original source, the original research that is written in French. But the person who did the research was the founder of the anthropological department at the University of Warsaw.
Mhm.
And so we're able to now take and show that what the evolutionist that challenged me on this said was that this researcher would not have identified this as Neanderthal if he knew what he's supposed to know today.
Mhm.
Well, of course, what that means is that it would have been rejected out of hand.
Well, I think the important thing is that the Neanderthal man has no single feature which takes him outside the range of normal human variability.
Right.
There are a set of features which allow us, when we see this set, to say, we'll call this Neanderthal man, just like we might call this group Australian Aboriginal. Absolutely human, Homo sapiens, we don't even use the word race anymore because there's not enough genetic difference among humans to even consider different races. But the Neanderthal skeleton, from all the data we have, is fully human in every respect. There's no reason to assume he didn't speak as we do. And yet, it's interesting, just within the last few months, we've had a push to try to declare the chimpanzee Homo, okay, in the same genus as humans, while we're trying to argue that Neanderthal man, for whom we have burial customs, artwork, evidence of repairing broken bones, all this literature, we're trying to downscale Neanderthal man to some kind of an ape that didn't even interbreed with other human beings while trying to elevate a chimp to genus Homo. I mean, things are getting crazy out there.
Well, that's for sure. The whole, well, the other thing that really bothers me about this whole issue is that there's a lot of racial overtones.
Absolutely.
In terms of what has this evidence that the evolutionists have brought up has been used for in the past. It's been used to justify actually wiping out whole populations of people like Tasmanians and the Aborigines, and there's been horrific things done in the name of purifying the human race, and eugenics and Nazism, all the things that happened there. I blame that.
Well, Stephen Jay Gould said in his book, The Mismeasure of Man, that while he wouldn't hold up, evolution as sort of the whole basis for racism, we have plenty of races before evolution. Still, he said it put racism on a scientific footing.
Right.
And the whole eugenics movement, I know at my medical school some years ago, I was going to the library and I found a whole series of volumes on eugenics. It was a serialized journal about eugenics, and they quit subscribing for some reason back at 1932. And it was full of just racist comments, all based on the ideas of Sir Galton, who was the grandson of Charles Darwin. And it deals with breeding a master race, that through selective breeding we'll build a superior human being. Well, we know where Hitler went with that sort of thing.
Well, even the idea of anthropology, as it's being taught in classrooms or practiced as a scientific method, is almost racist in the way that they treat the people that they're studying, all the different people groups in the world, as specimens to be examined under the microscope as a scientific thing different than who they really are. And that really bothers me. And the whole idea of race being a criteria on how you evaluate a person's worth is just reprehensible to me.
Well, certainly it should be reprehensible to all Christians, and sadly it's not necessarily reprehensible to all Christians, but the Bible tells us that we are all one blood. and that Jesus came into the world to die for the sins of those who are the descendants of Adam. And if we are not all brothers and sisters of Adam, ultimately, then the Savior was not sent to die for us, or at least for those of us who are not descendants of Adam. So I think it's time that, at the very least, Christians show the way here and recognize all human beings as brothers and sisters in Christ, in that we all have descended from Adam and through finally Noah, and that there is no basis for discrimination. And today, the scientific community is basically throwing out the whole idea of race, because the genetic difference among all human beings, if you look at the genes of all human beings, 0.2% is the total difference among everybody. That's between males and females and everything. Then if you single out those characteristics that produce what we call, in quotes, racial differences, skin color, shape of eyes, minor things like that, you're talking about a small fraction of that 0.2.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. Well, thank you for being on our show tonight.
Thank you.
Revolution Against Evolution. We'll see you next time.